Hey, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So it has been 2 years on the dot since Matthew Tkachuk was traded for Jonathan Huberdeau. In the moment, one of the biggest trades in NHL history, and the impact that it's had on both teams in just the past 2 years has also been so immense in terms of two teams heading in massively different directions. But I kind of wanted to elaborate a little bit on it today because we're in the middle of the offseason. There's not a ton to talk about, and explain why, although one team definitely won from it more, you can imagine which team that is. It's the Florida Panthers after back-to-back trips to the Stanley Cup final, winning one this year finally. But I think that, like, in a way, it's kind of a win-win considering how disastrous it went for the Calgary Flames. I'm going to dive into this more. We're going to start with Florida and kind of go over the obvious on just how fantastic Matthew Tkachuk has been, and considering the fact that I, at the time, said that the Florida Panthers won this trade, so I got to collect my wins when I can. But I think it's gone so disastrous for the Calgary Flames that, in a way, it has kind of become a win for them. We're going to get to that when we get to it. But up first, let's just talk about the effect that Matthew Tkachuk has had on the Florida Panthers, because when looking at him, they already won the trade last year when he had 109 points and was a Hart finalist, led them offensively to the Stanley Cup final. But let's just go over this tweet from David R. He says the regular season stats: 159 games played, 66 goals, 197 points, plus 48, 8 game-winning goals, Hart finalist, All-Star game MVP. It's a little funny to throw into there. And then in the playoffs, 44 games played, 17 goals, 29 assists, 46 points, plus 12, 6 game-winning goals. Remember that Carolina Hurricanes series where I think he had 3 game-winning goals, 2 overtime goals, and then the one with like 5 seconds left to send them to the Stanley Cup final? He was just on another level last year, and even this year he still had, 22 points in 24 games. And yeah, 2 Eastern Conference championships and 1 Stanley Cup final. So from their perspective, I said it in the moment that they won that trade that I did like it for Florida, considering the fact that Huberdeau and Uyghur were 29, 30 years old on the last years of their contract. So even though I thought in the moment that Calgary was probably going to be better the following year, considering they had Huberdeau at like $6 million. Uyghur was only making $3 million. Immediately after that, that's what people left out. They were obviously going to want 8-year deals at eventually 10.5 and 6.25. Uyghur's actually a pretty solid deal, but they were going to need these mega deals, so it made sense for Bill Zito, who still had a pretty young core. Huberdeau was actually like the oldest one in that core, to say, yeah, I'll trade for the guy that just put up 104 points at 23, 24 years old, and I'll lock him up, especially because we're in Florida, to an 8-year deal at 9.5. So in the moment, I loved it for Florida. And obviously now, 2 years later, it has been one of the best trades in terms of moving off guys, even if the Calgary Flames hit that 2025 first-round pick out of the park, or Cole Schwindt turns into an absolute stud. They won this deal, no doubt. But when looking at Calgary, I kind of want to dive into this because it is kind of a galaxy brain take I'm about to give out. But I think, in a way, obviously, in the perfect scenario, Huberdeau would have continued to be a 115-point player. I didn't think that was going to be the case because I thought even when he had 115 or 116 points, I thought that was fugazi. They were the best offense of like the 21st century. They averaged like 4 goals a game. It was clearly not sustainable. He was more so a 90 to 100 point, very good player, but that was probably his peak. So ideally for Calgary, they would have maintained. Huberdeau would have still been a star. Uyghur would have been fantastic, and maybe they would have went on a run. But I think when looking at the more likely situation that was probably going to happen, well, obviously what happened. But when looking at it, I think what happened with Huberdeau absolutely falling off a cliff and becoming this 55-point kind of just like second liner would have been better in a way than Huberdeau just being an 80 to 90-point guy and just keeping the Calgary Flames a perfectly decent team. Like, in a way, Huberdeau busting, considering at the time in the summer of 2022, they already lost Johnny Gaudreau. We knew that they weren't going to be as good as that 2022 team because Markstrom's just far too erratic. Some of their guys just had career seasons, and it's not like they were a consistent team year over year. So the fact that they did bust immediately after, missed the playoffs, and decided, because of that, first off, Brad Treliving ended up leaving. They bring in Craig Conroy, who has a grander vision, a long-term vision, considering the effects of that first year with Huberdeau. They instead opted to trade their guys to the deadline. If Jonathan Huberdeau comes in and has a decent season and the Calgary Flames are the first wild card team and lose in the first round, there's a reality right now where the Calgary Flames are just stuck in no man's land. They give Elias Lindholm an 8x8 at the start of last season or the last offseason. They give Hanifin this monster deal. They give Chris Tanev a similar deal that the Toronto Maple Leafs gave to him. So in a way, Jonathan Huberdeau completely busting allowed the Calgary Flames, rightfully so, to just tear it down. We talk about the Calgary Flames since they made the Stanley Cup final in 2004, and even that was kind of like an out of the nowhere run, basically since the core that won them the Stanley Cup. They have just been this no man's land team. Their highest draft pick ever was Sam Bennett back in 2014 at 4th overall. They have not picked high. They have never gone through this proper rebuild. So in a way, Jonathan Huberdeau turning into the worst contract in the NHL, resulting in them missing the playoffs last year, and this year even going down further in terms of being an 81-point team. In a way, it was a blessing in disguise for the Calgary Flames. Again, Florida Panthers, they won this far more, but I don't think the Calgary Flames, if Jonathan Huberdeau has a decent season and the Calgary Flames are just a 90 to 100 point team or 85 to 100 point team the next 5 seasons, I think that them stinking these next 3 to 4 years as a result of Huberdeau kind of nuking this core because he was so bad is going to be what's best for the Calgary Flames going forward. So that's my take. I kind of just wanted to flesh it out. Again, I'm saying it's like the title of this probably says like why the Huberdeau for Tkachuk trade is actually a win-win nowadays. The Panthers clearly won more, but I do think the Flames in acknowledging because Huberdeau sucks so much that they needed to go down this path is kind of a win from them. They badly needed a rebuild because it was stupid. It was always stupid in the moment. I said it. Once Johnny Gaudreau walked, they should have traded Matthew Tkachuk for picks and prospects. You can go back and watch all my videos. I repeatedly said, if you try to retool here on the fly, you lose 200-point players, and you try to kind of retool. Although I thought they got solid value in the Weegar and Huberdeau deal, they were never going to yet again have that same success. Their team was kind of fugazi in that 2022 season. But let me know in the comments, what do you think about this take? Am I absolutely out of my ass? Panthers definitely slam dunk won this trade regardless of what happens going forward. But I think if the Calgary Flames build the right way the next 3 to 4 years, they're not going to look back too fond. They're going to look back not fondly on the trade, but they're going to say that was a necessary step to get where we were instead of just being this completely average, mediocre team like we had been for the prior 20 years. So if Calgary continues to build this year, they're going to really stink. They're going to get a top 5 pick. They're going to get their next. Just dropped my phone. They're going to get their next franchise player, and in a weird way, whoever they take top 5, they're going to have Jonathan Huberdeau to thank for that. So I'll see you in the next one. Peace.